I had been a vice hospital director for 8 years. I built an entire department with my own hands, one that ranked first in the entire city. My fiancé's unmarried younger sister wanted to use connections to get into the hospital. I rejected her strictly according to regulations. She turned around and accused me of taking bribes. The investigation team spent 3 full months digging into everything, so thoroughly that they practically checked whether I farted clean or not. They found nothing. I was proven innocent. And yet, my position as vice hospital director was still revoked. My fiancé called me. She did it because she wanted what was best for you, he said. She said you were too high profile. Being demoted a bit would actually be good for you. I hung up the phone and submitted my resignation that very day. The head of HR rushed over, sweating profusely. You can't leave. You absolutely can't, she said. The complicated surgery last month, only you can perform it. I smiled, packed my things, and said, go find someone through your connections. A week later, 3 major surgeries in the department were postponed. 12 expert panels had no one to chair their case discussions. The hospital director personally called me, his voice trembling. When my phone rang, I had just finished a 7-hour operation. On the screen, 3 characters appeared, Minh Vũ. I swiped to answer. Hey, he said lightly, the investigation results are out. I took off my blue surgical gown. My bones felt like they were falling apart. The hospital has decided to formally remove you from the vice director position, he continued, and reassign you to the medical records archive. I froze. She did it because she wanted what was best for you. Minh Vu's voice came through the receiver again, carrying a tone of benevolent consolation, as if he were granting mercy. She said you were too eye-catching. Too many people were watching you in that position. Trouble was bound to come sooner or later. Being demoted now is actually good for you. Once this storm passes, we can still get married and live peacefully. His sister's voice echoed in my mind, intimate, familiar. Lam, his precious younger sister. She wanted to exploit her relationship with me to enter my department. A graduate from a 3rd-tier private university, who hadn't even passed the medical licensing exam, wanted to enter the most prestigious cardiothoracic surgery department in the entire city. I rejected her according to regulations. She retaliated by accusing me of taking bribes and abusing my power. The Discipline Inspection Committee and the hospital jointly investigated me for 3 months, turning over every stone. In the end, they proved I was clean. And this was the outcome. So being falsely accused is also, for my own good? I asked calmly. The other end of the line fell silent for a moment. Hey, how can you think so badly of Lam? Minh Vũ said, his tone tinged with reproach. She's still a child. She didn't understand. After you rejected her, she acted impulsively. She knows she was wrong. She's been crying non-stop these past few days, saying, I'm sorry, sister-in-law, you're a vice director, why argue with a child? Can we just let this go? As I listened, his voice suddenly felt incredibly distant. We had known each other for 3 years. We had been engaged for 1. I thought he understood reason. I thought he knew right from wrong. Now it seemed I had been wrong. Minh Vũ, I interrupted him. Does your mother know about this result? Of course she does. She also thinks this handling is the best. She said, women shouldn't be too strong. It's better to be content with your place. You'll need to focus on family in the future. Hey, our family doesn't need you to hold high office. As long as you live peacefully, that's enough. I laughed. The resentment that had been suffocating me for 3 months suddenly dissipated. I opened the drawer in my office and took out a pack of women's cigarettes. I had bought them the day I was appointed vice hospital director. I told myself that when I no longer wanted to do this job, I would light one. I understand, I said. I took a deep drag. The sharp smoke burned into my lungs. Then that's it. Huh? What do you mean, that's it? Min Vũ sounded confused. I said I understand, I repeated, and hung up. Before his number could call again, I blocked it. I deleted Lam and his mother from WeChat as well. The world instantly became quiet. I stubbed out the cigarette and picked up the internal phone on my desk. Director Wang. Hello? Director Wang. Director Trình Hi. Oh my God, you finally turned your phone on. I heard about the investigation results. Don't take it to heart. The hospital is just. I'm done, I said flatly. What? Done, what? He thought he'd misheard. I'm resigning. My resignation report, I submitted it to you 3 months ago. Please forward it now. The line went dead silent. After more than 10 seconds, his voice sounded like he'd seen a ghost. Director Trình Hi, you can't leave. What kind of joke is this? If you leave, what will the department do? The patient scheduled for aortic arch replacement and elephant trunk stent implantation next week. Who else would dare hold the scalpel besides you? I leaned back in my chair and looked at the gloomy sky outside the window. Go find someone through your connections, I said, and hung up. I began packing. There wasn't much in the office, a few white surgical gowns, a mug, and a bookshelf packed tight with professional volumes. I didn't plan to take a single book. Most were rare editions gifted by my doctoral advisor. The rest were advanced medical journals I had sourced overseas myself. When I first joined the first municipal hospital, the cardiothoracic department had been a third-tier department. Barely a handful of level 4 surgeries a year. I led this team book by book, case by case. 8 years. I brought the department to number 1 in the city, top 3 in the province. A knock came at the door. My student, Trong Man, peeked in, eyes red. Professor. She was choking up. I saw the hospital notice. I nodded and placed the framed photo on my desk into the box. It was my engagement photo with Min Vũ. Looking at it now only made my mouth taste bitter. Professor, how can they treat you like this? Trong Man was shaking with anger. All because of that shameless accusation from Lam. Her competence, we all saw it during the interview. She couldn't answer anything. She might as well have written "connection higher" on her face. You haven't taken a single day off in 5 years. Even during my dad's surgery. You stayed the whole time. You never accepted a single red envelope. How can they smear you like this? I patted her shoulder lightly. It's fine. This isn't smearing, I said calmly. It's strategic consideration. In the eyes of hospital leadership, a clean vice director with no backing is less valuable than appeasing a well-connected family. I taped the box shut. Professor, are you really going to the archives? Her eyes were full of unwillingness. That place is just a waiting room for retirement. If you go there, your talent will rot. I smiled. I'm not going to the archives. I'm not going anywhere. I resigned. Her eyes went wide, her mouth formed an O. Resigned? Yes. I set the box on the floor. Trong Man, you're the most talented student I've ever taught. Remember this. Technique is the foundation of a doctor. Everything else doesn't matter. As I spoke, the office door was pushed open. The newly appointed deputy department head, Lu Keen Min, stood there, his face smug. He had coveted my position for a long time. Oh? What's Director Trình doing here? His gaze swept over the box on the floor, the corner of his mouth curling upward. Congratulations, I hear you're being reassigned to the archives. That's a nice, leisurely place. I ignored him. Trong Man was so angry she was about to curse. But I stopped her with a look. Speaking even one word to someone like him was a waste. Seeing no reaction from me, Lu Keen Min lost interest and turned his attention to Trong Man. Little Zhang, what are you standing around for? Go prepare for this afternoon's case discussion. Oh, right, he added deliberately. Director Trình won't be attending. I'll be chairing today's multi-arteritis case. He puffed out his chest proudly. Trong Man's face instantly turned pale. That patient is extremely complex. She blurted out. It's the most difficult case in the entire hospital. All previous plans were personally designed by her. Lu Keen-min couldn't even understand my surgical videos. Professor. Trong Man was on the verge of tears. I picked up my bag and looked one last time at the office I had devoted 8 years of my life to. I said to Lu Keen-min. Good luck. Then I turned and walked out without looking back. As I passed through the corridor, brushing past nurses and staff, everyone stood up. The head nurse stood there with reddened eyes, clearly wanting to say something. In the end, she only lowered her head. I walked out of the department. The phone in my pocket kept vibrating non-stop. I didn't need to look to know who it was, Director Wong. People from the department, maybe even the hospital president. I didn't answer. I turned the phone off. Outside the hospital gate, the sunlight was blinding. I narrowed my eyes and hailed a car. Sir, I said, take me to the nearest real estate transaction center. The apartment intended for my wedding with Ko Min-Vu was registered under my name. He paid the down payment. I paid the monthly mortgage. I didn't need it anymore. I slept for a full day and night in a hotel. When I woke up, it was already dark. I turned my phone back on. Instantly, more than 100 missed calls and dozens of WeChat messages flooded the screen. Some were from Director Wong. Some from the hospital president. Some from colleagues in the department. The rest, dozens of them, were from Ko Min-Vu and his mother. I opened WeChat. Ko Min-Vu's messages progressed from questioning, to commanding, and finally to panic. Trình Hi, what are you doing? Even being upset has limits. I'm telling you right now, go apologize to President Wong and say the resignation was just said in anger. Why are you selling the apartment? What are you trying to do? Have you lost your mind? I was wrong, okay? Please call me back. My mom is about to lose it. His mother's messages were far more aggressive. Trình Hi, you ungrateful woman. Did our family ever treat you badly? We gave you status and now you think you're something special? A dismissed vice director putting on airs. That apartment belongs to our family. You dare sell it? I'm telling you, I won't let this go. I read everything coldly, then deleted it all. After that, I saw dozens of messages from Trong Man. Professor, something's wrong. At this afternoon's case conference, Lu Keen-min lost control and argued with the neurology experts. The family of the polyarteritis patient wants a transfer. The department is in chaos. There are 3 surgeries this afternoon, 2 of them level 4. Lu Keen-min says he can't do them and wants to postpone. The families have already gone to medical affairs. President Wong lost his temper this afternoon. His face was terrifying. Professor, where are you? Please come back. Without you, we really can't manage. The latest message was sent 1 minute ago. Professor, do you remember the little boy from last week? The one with congenital tetralogy of Fallot and underdeveloped right pulmonary artery. He's been transferred to the ICU, acute heart failure. His family is kneeling outside the office, begging you to save their child. You're the only one who's ever done this surgery. My heart sank. I remembered that child. 6 years old. Big eyes. Thin, fragile. Unusually well behaved. I had revised his surgical plan more than a dozen times. It was the most difficult case in the department. The surgery had been scheduled for next week. I told myself I had already resigned. That everything at the hospital had nothing to do with me anymore. But that innocent face would not leave my mind. I took a deep breath and was about to call Trong Man back when an unfamiliar local number rang. I hesitated briefly, then answered. Is this Trình Hi? The voice on the other end was tired, suppressing anger. This is President Wong. Where are you? His tone was on the verge of explosion. President Wang, I said calmly, I already resigned. I don't care whether you resigned or not. He shouted. I'm ordering you to return to the hospital immediately. Do you know what happened after you left? 3 surgeries postponed, 12 expert panels without a chair. The medical affairs complaint line is overwhelmed. You think the hospital can't function without you? I said nothing. Come back right now and operate on the patient. He continued. I'll personally handle the situation with the co-family. As for your vice director position, I can find a solution. President Wang, I interrupted. The child with tetralogy of Fallot is in critical condition. In the entire country, there are only 2 people who can independently perform this surgery. Besides me, the only one is Professor Li Kai-min at Hipwa Hospital in Jingzhou. His surgical schedule is full until June next year. The line went silent. Only heavy breathing remained. I could picture his face, darker than ever. And as for the department, I continued after a pause. Didn't you already appoint a new deputy department head? Director Liu Keen-min is a key talent the hospital has been cultivating. I believe he can handle it. I hung up. In President Wang's office, a valuable clay teacup was thrown to the floor and shattered. His chest rose and fell violently. Chaos, he muttered. Total chaos. He grabbed the phone and roared into the internal line. Liu Keen-min, get in here immediately. 5 minutes later, Liu Keen-min rushed in, wearing a fawning smile. President Wang, you called for me? President Wang pointed straight at his face. The child with tetralogy of Fallot, have you reviewed the case? Where is the surgical plan? The smile on Liu Keen-min's face froze. President, that case is extremely complicated. Director Trin previously. I don't want excuses. President Wang slammed the desk. Trình Hi could do it. Why can't you? You're the deputy department head now. Tell me, can you do it or not? Liu Keen-min's legs began to shake. Do it? He couldn't even understand the surgical plans Trình Hi left behind. The combined techniques and vascular reconstruction strategies were like reading an ancient scripture. Forget being the lead surgeon. Even as a third assistant, he was afraid he couldn't keep up. President, please give me more time. I'll arrange another expert consultation. Consultation? President Wang sneered. The patient is in acute heart failure. Every second counts. How long do you want to consult? Until the family sues us and reports us to the health bureau? Sweat poured down Liu Keen-min's face. Useless, President Wang snapped, slumping back into his chair. Get out. Liu Keen-min fled the office. The moment the door closed, President Wang's anger turned into deep anxiety. He knew Trình Hi was right. In the entire hospital, no one but her could save that child. He hurriedly picked up the phone. Lao Zhang, help me investigate something. Find out which hotel Trình Hi is staying at right now. At the same time, chaos erupted in the Ko family villa. Ko Minvu's mother, Trong Lan, slammed her phone onto the coffee table. She's selling the apartment. That damned woman, how dare she? Ko Minvu's face was dark as he repeatedly called Trình Hi. All he heard was, the subscriber you have dialed is powered off. Mom, stop yelling, he snapped. How can I stop? Trong Lan pointed at him. I told you long ago, this woman has big ambitions. You can't control her. You didn't listen. Now look, she loses her position and immediately turns against our family. She's dragged the Ko family's reputation through the mud. Who does she think she is without the title of vice director? And she dares break up with my son? Ko Minvu felt increasingly unsettled. At first, he thought Trình Hi was just angry, something he could smooth over. He never imagined she would be this decisive. Resigning. Blocking all contact. Selling the apartment. No hesitation. For the first time, he felt real panic. Not because of love, but because he had grown used to living under the spotlight she gave him. At gatherings, People introduced him as the fiancé of Vice Director Trình Hi, the top cardiothoracic surgeon at First Municipal Hospital. Those admiring looks had intoxicated him. Now everything was about to disappear. No. Ko Min-Vu stood up abruptly. I'm going to the hospital to find her. She must still be handing over work. Trong Lan stood up as well, eyes sharp. Yes, go find her. I want to see if her wings are really hard enough now. Our family gave her dignity, that's why she could stand tall. Without it, she'll kneel. Across the city, in a quiet cafe, Trình Hi received a phone call from Shanghai. The caller was Tran Koi Dong, president of Duc Nhan Hospital, the top private hospital group. 3 years ago, he had tried to recruit her. She had refused. Director Trin, he said warmly. I heard you've left First Municipal Hospital. In the top medical circles, no news stays hidden for long. Yes, President Tran. Then I'll be straightforward. President Tran laughed lightly. The terms I offered 3 years ago are still valid. And I can offer even more. The position of Administrative Director of the Cardiothoracic Surgery Department would be hers. She would personally choose her own independent team of specialists. He would take care of recruiting top talent from across the country. The nation's highest-grade hybrid operating room would be prioritized for her use. In addition, there would be 5 million yuan in startup research funding. Any cutting-edge project she proposed would receive the hospital's full backing. Trình Hi, he said calmly, I only need one answer from you. Holding her phone, Trình Hi looked out the window at the endless flow of traffic below. The suffocating gloom that had followed her for 3 months seemed to be completely swept away by sunlight in that very moment. The corner of her lips curved upward slightly. President Tran, when can I start? At the same time, the cardiothoracic surgery department of First Municipal Hospital was like a pressure cooker on the verge of exploding. A young boy suffering from tetralogy of Fallot was rapidly deteriorating and had just been rushed into emergency care yet again. His parents knelt outside the doctor's office, sobbing in despair, calling Trình Hi's name over and over. Please, let us see Director Trin just once. Only she can save our son. Doctors and nurses stood nearby, faces heavy with tension. Not a single person dared step forward. Lu Keen-min had locked his office door and unplugged the phone, announcing that an emergency consultation was underway. Trong Man watched everything unfold, her heart aching as if being carved apart. She had sent countless messages to Trình Hi, but none were answered. She knew her mentor well. Once she made a decision, she never turned back. But the child. Just then, loud shouting erupted outside the department. Ko Min-Vu burst in aggressively with his mother. Trong Lan. Where's Trình Hi? Tell her to get the hell out here. Trong Lan's voice was sharp and piercing, no different from a fish vendor screaming in a marketplace. The head nurse rushed forward to block them. Mr. Ko, Mrs. Ko, this is a patient area. Please keep your voices down. Director Trin has already resigned. Resigned? Trong Lan glared. What right does she have to resign? My son hasn't even broken up with her yet. And she dares pull this stunt first? Ko Min-Vu frowned, shoved the head nurse aside, and scanned the room. He spotted Trong Man. You, come here, he barked, pointing at her. You're Trình Hi's student. Where is she? Speak, now. Trong Man clenched her fists. The anger she had been suppressing finally exploded. I don't know. She stared straight into Ko Min-Vu's eyes, enunciating every word clearly. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell people as ungrateful and heartless as you. What did you say? Ko Min-Vu hadn't expected a mere intern to talk back like that. Rage surged instantly. Trong Lan shrieked even louder, lunging forward and raising her hand to slap Trong Man. Trong Man didn't dodge. But the slap never landed. A hand as hard as steel clamped around Trong Lan's wrist. It was the boy's father. A tall man, eyes bloodshot, like a wild beast driven into a corner. You're the ones who forced Director Trin to leave, he said hoarsely. His voice was rough, but the pressure behind it sent a chill down everyone's spine. I don't care who you are. Get out of here right now. If anything happens to my son, I'll take my life fighting you. Trong Lan trembled violently, her arrogance instantly cut in half. Hospital security arrived at once and dragged Ko Min Vu and his mother outside. Let go of me. Do you know who I am? Ko Min Vu shouted, still struggling. The farce only made the already tense department descend further into chaos. The news quickly reached President Vong. At the very moment he received the address of the hotel where Trình Hi was staying and was preparing to go see her in person. He learned that the Ko family had stormed the department and clashed with the patient's family. After hanging up, President Vong nearly had a heart attack from rage. A bunch of useless idiots who only know how to destroy things. He slammed the phone down and shouted at the driver. Hill Hotel, now, as fast as you can. He had a powerful premonition, if he was even one step too late, there would be no turning back. Meanwhile, at the Ko residence, Ko Lam Lam, the younger sister who had caused all of this, was casually browsing job listings online. She had assumed Trình Hi had already been pushed aside and that her own position at the hospital was secured. Instead, her brother called and unleashed a furious tirade, saying Trình Hi had resigned and cut off all contact. Soon after, her mother called too, her voice urgent and furious, saying the hospital was in total chaos and everyone was cursing the Ko family. Ko Lam Lam began to panic. She had only wanted to drag Trình Hi down to vent her anger. She never imagined things would spiral this far. She opened a local forum. A post was climbing rapidly to the top. Exposé. First Municipal Hospital forces out its top cardiothoracic surgeon, connections more terrifying than tigers. She clicked it. After reading just a few lines, her face turned deathly pale. In the administrative lounge on the first floor of Hotel Hun, Trình Hi was chatting pleasantly with President Tran of Duc Nguyen Hospital. All contract terms had been finalized. The compensation package was even better than what had been discussed over the phone. President Tran looked at Trình Hi with undisguised admiration. Director Tran, no, I should say President Tran now. Don't worry, once you're in Shanghai, just focus on your work. Leave everything else to me. Trình Hi nodded and lifted her coffee cup. Thank you, President Tran. Just as she was about to sign the contract, a breathless voice shattered the harmonious atmosphere. Trình Hi. President Vong burst in, his tie crooked, hair disheveled, none of his usual authority left. Behind him were Ko Min Vu and Trong Lan, looking like defeated roosters. When all three saw President Tran sitting opposite Trình Hi, with the contract laid out between them, their expressions changed instantly. President Vong's heart sank. This is bad. Trình Hi, you can't sign that. He rushed forward, his voice distorted by panic. President Tran frowned and stood up. And you are? I'm her former superior, President Vong said hurriedly. Vong Kien Kwok, President of First Municipal Hospital. There's been a misunderstanding. He forced a smile. Director Trin is a priceless asset to us. We absolutely cannot let her leave. Turning to Trình Hi, his tone softened, carrying a hint of pleading. Xiao Trin, come back with me. That child can't survive without you. Your former vice president position, I guarantee it will be restored. No, I'll personally recommend you for promotion to executive vice president. Trình Hi didn't even look up. President Vong, she said calmly, since when can a hospital's decisions be changed whenever someone feels like it? The single sentence left President Vong choking, his face flushing red. Trình Hi, don't get arrogant just because you've climbed higher. Trong Lan shrieked again. My son, Min Vu. What makes him unworthy of you? What more do you want? Isn't it just a vice president title? Without our Ko family, how long do you think you could keep it? Mrs. Ko tried to stop her, but it was too late. Trình Hi finally looked up. Her gaze was cold as ice. First, she said evenly, I earned the vice president position because over 8 years I performed more than 7,000 surgeries and published dozens of sci papers. It has nothing to do with your co-family, not 1 cent. Second, whether your son is worthy of me. She gave a faint, bitter smile. I was blind before, now I can finally see. She looked at Ko Min-Vu, the man who had once been the love of her life. Ko Min-Vu, the moment you told me that the person who framed me did it, for my own good, everything between us ended. Ko Min-Vu's face went completely white. His lips trembled. Hi, I was wrong. Give me another chance. I'll make Lam kneel and apologize if you want. No need. Trình Hi picked up the pen. Without sparing them a single glance, she signed her name at the bottom of the contract. Her handwriting was sharp and resolute. She handed the contract to President Tran. President Tran, happy cooperation. President Tran smiled, took it, and shook her hand. Happy cooperation, President Tran. He then turned, took out a business card, and placed it in front of President Vong. President Vong, this is my card. President Tran will officially assume her position at Duc Nhan next Monday. As for the child with tetralogy of Fallot, if your hospital can't handle the case, you may consider a transfer. Of course, our beds are also quite full, especially for surgeries performed by President Tran. There will likely be a wait. Every word struck President Vong and the co-family like a hammer. Trình Hi stood up, picked up her bag, and from beginning to end did not spare the three of them another glance, as if they didn't exist. She left the hall side by side with President Tran, her retreating figure decisive, free, and proudly unyielding. President Vong collapsed into a chair, his face ashen. Ko Min-Vu stared after her, his eyes hollow, as if his soul had been drained away. Only Trong Lan's shrill curses still echoed through the lobby, but now they sounded nothing more than pathetic and absurd. Trình Hi, you ungrateful traitor, you'll regret this, you'll regret it. President Vong stood frozen in place, mind completely blank. Duc Nhan Hospital, Tran Kai Dong. That name carried immense weight in the domestic medical world, far above First Municipal Hospital. Trình Hi had been invited to serve as director of cardiothoracic surgery. With 5 million yuan in research funding, President Vong felt as if an invisible hand were crushing his heart, leaving him unable to breathe. All because of a foolish personal connection, all to appease a baseless accusation. He had personally driven away a top-tier talent, someone who could have brought unparalleled honor and value to the hospital. And now, that very talent was being treasured like gold by a direct competitor. The most fatal blow was Tran Kai Dong's final remark. If you can't solve it, consider a transfer. This wasn't just poaching talent, it was a public slap, grinding the face of Vong Kim Kwok and First Municipal Hospital straight into the dirt. Without mercy, he watched Trình Hi's retreating figure disappear from view, and for the first time, he felt real fear. Not fear of losing face, but fear for the child lying in the ICU, fighting for life second by second. If that child died at First Municipal Hospital, President Vong would be finished. President Vong? President Vong? Ko Min-Vu grabbed his sleeve, trembling. What do we do now? Hi, she. President Vong suddenly turned around. His eyes looked as if they could devour someone alive. He violently shook Ko Min-Vu's hand off and hissed through clenched teeth. Get lost. He no longer cared about dignity. He charged out of the hotel like a madman and immediately called the hospital's medical affairs director. The child with tetralogy of Fallot. How's the family? Are they stable? He paused, then roared, no matter what, keep them here for me. On the other end of the line, the director's voice was nearly breaking into tears. Shanghai, Duc Nhan Hospital. President Vong's vision went black. He nearly collapsed. He knew then, everything was truly over. At the cardiothoracic surgery department of First Municipal Hospital, the tall man named Li Vi, the child's father, stood silently in the office. There were no tears left, only a chilling calm on his face. Behind him stood two men in black suits, their expressions stern, clearly not people to be trifled with. Lu Keen-min was escorted out of his office, his legs shaking uncontrollably. Director Lu, Lee V said evenly, "My lawyer has already contacted the hospital. Please prepare all of my son's medical records and test results. We are transferring hospitals." Lu Keen-min was drenched in sweat. "Mr. Lee, please don't rush. Your child's condition is extremely critical. He can't handle long-distance transport. Let us worry about that." Lee V cut him off. Duc Nhan has dispatched a dedicated transport team with ECMO support. A helicopter will land directly at the hospital helipad. A helicopter. An ECMO team. Lu Keen-min felt dizzy. Just who exactly was this family? "You forced away the only person who could save my son." Lee V's gaze swept over everyone in the room before finally settling on Lu Keen-min's pale face. "Now I will take my son somewhere that can save him. As for justice, I'll settle that with you slowly." He paused, as if remembering something. "Oh, and one more thing. All transfer costs, treatment fees, and compensation resulting from delayed care, my legal team will calculate everything clearly with First Municipal Hospital." Lu Keen-min felt the world spinning around him. He knew Trình Hi's departure had taken away not just surgical skill, but the backbone of the entire cardiothoracic department. What remained was a pile of ruins, already beginning to collapse. At the Ko family villa, the atmosphere was heavy, like a funeral parlor. Trong Lan sat dazed on the sofa, none of her former arrogance left. "How did this happen? How did it come to this?" she muttered. Ko Min-vu locked himself in his room, refusing to say a single word. Ko Lam Lam curled up in a corner, hugging her knees, her entire body shaking. On her phone screen was still the local forum post. The article had exposed her real name, school background, and the details of how she had stammered through an interview, unable to answer basic questions. The comments had already reached the thousands. A third-rate private college graduate wants to enter First Municipal's cardiothoracic department? Who gave her that confidence? With skills like that, she dares to become a doctor? Then frames someone out of jealousy. Disgusting. This whole family is rotten to the core. So they were jealous nobodies dragging someone else into the mud, and she flew straight into the sky instead. Textbook Pua man, blind mother, stupid and vicious little sister. Good thing Director Trin escaped. So satisfying. The comment that terrified her the most was one with an overwhelming number of likes. The injured child's father, Lee V, is the CEO of a leading new energy tech conglomerate in the city. This family is about to be finished. New energy tech. Lee V. Ko Lam Lam felt a chill run through her entire body. One of her father's major partners also had the surname Lee and worked in the same industry. She didn't dare think any further. The front door of the villa swung open. Ko Wei Dong, the head of the Ko family, walked in, his face dark as a storm cloud. As chairman of a publicly listed company, his presence alone usually inspired fear. Now, he said nothing. He simply swept a cold glance over the three figures frozen in the living room before walking straight up to Ko Lam Lam. "Did you post that forum article?" His voice was icy. "Dad, I didn't mean to." Ko Lam Lam was so frightened she could barely speak. Smack. A sharp slap landed squarely on her face. She fell to the floor, clutching her cheek, staring at her father in disbelief. "Didn't mean to?" Ko Wei Dong laughed in anger. "Do you know Lee V just cancelled a 30 million yuan quarterly contract with me? Do you know my business partners are all hinting that the Ko family raises daughters who are cruel and unethical? Do you know your stupidity and malice have dragged our family's reputation through the mud?" Trong Lan snapped out of her daze and rushed over, hugging her daughter. "Why are you hitting her? Why put all the blame on her? Isn't it Trình Hi who looked down on our family?" "Shut up." Ko Wei Dong pointed at her, fury blazing in his eyes. "Do you even have the nerve to speak? Weren't you the one who kept telling our son that Trình Hi was too strong? That a woman outranking a man would be hard to control later? I told you already, Trình Hi is a dragon among mortals. Our co-family was the one climbing up. You didn't believe me, you mistook a diamond for glass. And now, someone else picked her up. Are you satisfied?" He looked down at Trong Lan, who had collapsed onto the floor, each word cutting like steel. "From now on, stay inside, don't go out and make a fool of yourself." Then he turned to Ko Lam Lam, disgust filling his gaze. "You're grounded for 6 months. All your bank cards are frozen. Forget about becoming a doctor, you lack both intelligence and basic ethics." Finally, he glanced toward the closed door behind which Ko Min Vu was hiding. "And that precious son of ours can deal with the pile of filth he created himself. A man who can't keep his woman, can't earn her respect, useless." With that, he turned and walked straight upstairs to the study. Bang! The door slammed shut. In the living room, only Trong Lan and Ko Lam Lam remained, mother and daughter clinging to each other, faces ashen, breaking down in sobs. Only then did they understand. Trình Hi's departure was not the end. It was the beginning of their nightmare. 1 week later. Shanghai, Duc Nhan Hospital. Trình Hi, dressed in a pristine white lab coat, walked through the bright, spotless corridor. The air no longer carried the stale, suffocating odor of First Municipal Hospital. Instead, there was a light scent of disinfectant mixed with coffee. Everyone, from guiding nurses to doctors pushing equipment, moved quickly, but with focused eyes and a confidence born of professionalism. The office President Tran had arranged for her was nearly 3 times the size of her old one. One entire wall was floor-to-ceiling glass, overlooking Shanghai's dazzling skyline. Her new assistant, a sharp young woman named Tiu Na, had neatly organized the coming week's schedule and the key patient files, placing them squarely on her desk. "President Trin," Tiu Na reported, "the pediatric patient with tetralogy of Fallot, Li Viet Nien, was transferred safely last night. Vital signs are stable. The pre-op case conference is scheduled for 10 a.m. All department heads involved will attend. These are the complete files." "All right," Trình Hi said, taking them. She felt as if everything had finally returned to her hands. At 10 a.m., the pre-operative conference began. Textbook-level precision. The head of anesthesiology analyzed risks and anesthesia plans with pinpoint accuracy. The extracorporeal circulation team led detailed setup and protection strategies. The ICU director coordinated every aspect of post-op recovery. No one spoke unnecessarily. No one shifted responsibility. Every discussion revolved around one core goal: ensuring surgical success. Absolute patient safety. Trình Hi sat at the center, clearly outlining her surgical plan and the key technical challenges. Everyone listened intently, the questions went straight to the point. This was what a top-tier team looked like. At 1 p.m., Trình Hi entered the operating room. It was an 8-hour extreme difficulty surgery. When she finally stepped out, she faced Li Vi and his wife, who had been anxiously waiting outside. She spoke gently. The surgery was very successful. The couple collapsed to the floor at once, crying and laughing through their overwhelming relief. The next day, the official account of Duc Nhan Hospital, along with several major medical media platforms, simultaneously published an article. Top expert Trình Hi joins Duc Nhan, successfully completes ultra-high difficulty pediatric cardiac surgery. The article provided a detailed, professional breakdown of the surgery's complexity and success, accompanied by a photo of Trình Hi in surgical scrubs, calm and focused. The post exploded like a bomb within First Municipal Hospital. Trong Man immediately shared the link in the department group chat. "See, this is our mentor." The group fell completely silent. Then, one by one, notifications of members leaving the group appeared. That very afternoon, 3 senior attending physicians from cardiothoracic surgery submitted resignation letters. They all had the same destination: Shanghai, Duc Nhan Hospital. They wanted to follow someone who could lead them to greater heights. Lu Min became the biggest joke in the hospital, pointed at wherever he went. President Vong, held responsible for the massive talent loss and serious medical risk, was summoned by higher authorities. Rumor had it he was forced to stand in a meeting room for an entire hour, being thoroughly reprimanded. At that exact moment, an unfamiliar number rang on the phone of Trình Hi's new assistant. Tiu Na. The caller ID read, Po Minh Vũ. No one knew how he had obtained the number. His voice was servile and cringing, so low it felt as if he were trying to burrow into the dirt. Hello, may I speak to Trình Hi? I'm her fiancé. Tiu Na glanced toward Trình Hi, who was discussing the next direction of a research project with her team. Using the most professionally polite tone possible, she replied, I'm sorry, but Director Trình is currently in a meeting. And to my knowledge, Director Trình is single at the moment. Is there anything else I can help you with? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then the call was cut off. Tiu Na set the phone down and did not report the call to Trình Hi. People like that, and matters so worthless, were not worth disturbing her director. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, falling across Trình Hi's figure. She was writing a series of complex cardiovascular modeling equations on the whiteboard. Her eyes were bright, sparkling with ambition and anticipation for the future. A completely new life belonged to her now. And only now had it truly begun. That article was like a precisely guided bomb, blowing apart the final veil concealing First Municipal Hospital. News of Trình Hi joining Duc Nhan Hospital and successfully completing an ultra-high difficulty surgery spread wildly through every channel imaginable. It began with professional medical platforms, then moved to local media, and eventually even social media accounts focused on current affairs jumped in. The headlines grew more sensational by the day. The fallen king leaves in bitterness, the newcomer ascends to godhood in a single battle. From First Municipal to Duc Nhan, did we lose a doctor? Or an entire era? An in-depth analysis. What lies behind the talent exodus from First Municipal Hospital? Vien Trong Vong stared at the non-stop news alerts lighting up his phone. His hands and feet were ice cold. What he had feared most had finally happened. Public opinion had completely turned in Trình Hi's favor, while First Municipal Hospital was nailed to the pillar of shame as a symbol of conservatism, rigidity, and hostility toward talent. More terrifying than public opinion was the wave of resignations, an exodus that severed the department's lifeline. After the 3 attending physicians resigned, the head of anesthesia for the cardiothoracic surgery department, Trình Hi's longtime partner of 5 years, submitted his resignation as well. Soon after, the 2 most experienced technicians from the extracorporeal circulation team followed. They didn't even bother with formal procedures. They sent their resignation letters straight to human resources and vanished without a trace. Someone posted a photo at Hongqiao high-speed rail station with the caption, "Those who chase the light will meet again." The light, of course, meant Trình Hi. In less than 2 short weeks, the core technical team of First Municipal's cardiothoracic surgery department was uprooted entirely. Lu Min fell into complete panic. Going to the hospital each day now felt no different from attending a funeral. Before him lay a pile of complex cases he barely understood. The looks from his colleagues were either pity or outright contempt. He wanted to operate, but no anesthesiologist dared to cooperate with him. No head nurse was willing to assign their most experienced scrub nurses. He became a general without an army. Worse still, the complications and mortality rates that Trình Hi's exceptional skill had once suppressed now surged upward like bamboo shoots after rain. A routine valve replacement, one of the most basic procedures, ended in disaster. The patient developed a sudden postoperative embolism. Resuscitation failed. The patient died. The family stormed the hospital, blocking the office doors, pointing at Lu Min and calling him a butcher. A murderer. He couldn't defend himself with a single word. He knew that if Trình Hi had performed the surgery, the success rate would have been 99%. In his hands, that remaining 1% risk had turned into a 100% tragedy. The entire department plunged into extreme panic. The shadow of medical malpractice loomed over everyone. No one dared accept critical patients anymore. If they could refuse, they refused. If they could transfer, they transferred. The cardiothoracic surgery department of First Municipal Hospital, the golden signboard that once topped the entire city, had rotted from the roots up. Vien Trong Vong was summoned by higher authorities within the medical system. Throughout the entire morning, he didn't dare take a single sip of water. The leaders didn't scold him. They simply placed a thick stack of online commentary articles in front of him and asked calmly, "Comrade Keen Kwok, First Municipal Hospital is a hospital of the people, not the private garden of any individual. As the person in charge, what are your thoughts on this matter?" Cold sweat poured from Vien Trong Vong's body. He knew this was the final ultimatum. If he couldn't reverse the situation, his position as director was finished. That afternoon, Vien Trong Vong booked a flight to Shanghai alone. He abandoned all dignity and pride for one last gamble. From 2 p.m. until 7 p.m., he sat in a cafe beneath the Duc Nguyen Hospital building. He watched Trình Hi emerge from the building after a day's work. Surrounded by outstanding colleagues, she had changed out of her scrubs and was wearing a finely tailored beige coat. Her long hair fell naturally over her shoulders. A faint smile curved her lips as she chatted with her colleagues. Compared to her days at First Municipal, she now looked brighter, more relaxed, and stronger. Vien Trong Vong gathered all his courage and stepped forward. Trình Hi, his voice was hoarse. Trình Hi stopped. Seeing him, she showed no surprise at all. Her gaze was calm, as if she were looking at a stranger. Vien Trong Vong. Her colleagues immediately became alert, stepping protectively in front of her. One of them was Vien Trong Tran Kai Dong. "Comrade Keen Kwok, what are you doing here?" Tran Kai Dong frowned. "Tiu Trin, let me speak with her for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes." Almost pleading, Vien Trong Vong squeezed past them. Trình Hi gestured for her colleagues to wait and stepped aside. "Vien Trong Vong, say what you need to say." "Tiu Trin, come back." Vien Trong Vong looked at her, his eyes bloodshot. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. I shouldn't have listened to rumors. I shouldn't have treated you that way. First Municipal needs you. The patients need you. The department you built with your own hands is nearly falling apart. Can you really be that heartless?" He played the emotional card, hoping to stir a sense of responsibility and shared history within her. Trình Hi listened quietly. She didn't interrupt or argue. When he finished, she spoke softly. "Vien Trong Vong, are you done?" He froze. "First, my departure from First Municipal was a personal choice. It had nothing to do with anyone else. I submitted my resignation through proper procedures. So please don't use the word need to impose a moral burden on me. Second, the department collapsed because its management system and mechanisms were flawed, not because I left. A healthy system does not fall apart because one person leaves. If it collapses, it means it was already rotten. Third, and most importantly." Trình Hi looked at him, her gaze sharp as a blade. "When I was accused, I was under investigation for 3 months. As director, did you ever speak one word for me? When the investigation proved my innocence and I was still demoted without cause, where were you? You weren't there. You chose to sacrifice me to suppress a crisis that never should have existed in the first place. Vien Trong Vong, when you abandoned me back then, you should have known this day would come." Each sentence struck his heart like a knife. "So please, go back," Trình Hi said calmly. "The cardiothoracic surgery department of First Municipal that I built died the day I left. The ruins that remain have nothing to do with me anymore." She turned and walked away. She didn't look back. Her figure disappeared into the shimmering lights of Shanghai's night. Vien Trong Vong stood frozen in place. His entire body numb with cold. As if the world had abandoned him. Ko Min-Vu also came to Shanghai. He arrived the day after Vien Trong Vong left. Telling no one. Like someone running away. Carrying an obsession and regret he himself could not fully understand. Since the day he was ignored by Trình Hi at the hotel and then harshly rebuked by Vien Trong Vong. His world had completely collapsed. He had lost Trình Hi, the woman he had always believed would forever admire and depend on him. He had also lost the halo of being the fiancé of Vice Director Trin. That title, which once made friends and colleagues fawn over him, now drew only pity and ridicule. His father froze his supplementary credit cards, kicked him out of the family company's projects, and forced him back to work at a small brokerage firm he had once disdained. But at the office, he could clearly feel the strange looks from all directions. People whispered behind his back, about his family, about his foolish sister, about his tactless mother. They said he was blind, that he had lost a dazzling diamond because of a useless younger sister. He couldn't bear those looks. He took leave and stayed home in a daze. Then he saw the news, Trình Hi shining brilliantly at Duc Nguyen Hospital. In the photo, she was confident, professional, radiant, dazzling. That light had once been his glory. Now it was like a sharp needle stabbing straight into his eyes. He felt as if he were going mad. He just wanted to see her. He believed that as long as he could see her, as long as she could see his remorse, everything might still be salvageable. Like a stalker driven by obsession, he lingered outside Duc Nguyen Hospital. He didn't dare storm in like Vien Trong Vong, he had no such standing. He could only hide in a cafe across the street, peering through the glass, secretly watching a world he no longer had the right to enter. And he saw it all. He saw Trình Hi in a white and blue coat, leading a group of young doctors on ward rounds. She stood at the center of the group, calmly and clearly analyzing each patient's condition. A single gentle question from her was enough to make elite students from top medical schools break out in cold sweat. He saw Trình Hi in a conference room, delivering a presentation in fluent, confident English before dozens of department heads and experts. Complex models and dense data filled the large screen behind her. She didn't need to glance at any notes, every sentence came out precise and unhesitating. He also saw a well-dressed, refined man who, every afternoon, drove an unfamiliar luxury car and waited outside the hospital gates with a bouquet of flowers. Trình Hi always declined him politely, yet the man persisted day after day. The way he looked at her was filled with affection and admiration. So thick it seemed impossible to dissolve. Ko Min-Vu's heart felt as though it had been soaked in lemon water, aching and unbearably sour. In his memories, Trình Hi was the woman who would wash her hands and cook soup for him. Quietly wait for him to get off work. Blush just because of a single word of praise from him. When had she become the woman she was now? No, she had always been this way. She had always been outstanding. Always strong. It was only when she was with him that she dimmed her own light. Carefully protecting his fragile pride. And he had taken her love and sacrifice for granted. He was the one who had pushed that light away with his own hands. At last, he gathered all his courage and dialed the phone number he knew by heart. The ringing went on for a long time before someone answered. Hello? It was Trình Hi's voice, calm, polite, carrying a hint of distance. Hi, it's me. Ko Min-Vu's voice trembled. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, as if she were trying to remember who the voice belonged to. What is it? Those three words were like an ice spike, piercing straight through the last line of defense in Ko Min-Vu's heart. I'm in Shanghai. I want to see you. Just once. I'm sorry, I'm very busy. Trình Hi's voice did not waver in the slightest. I have 2 surgeries this afternoon, and an international video conference tonight. If you're here for a consultation, please make an appointment through the hospital's official channels. I'm not here for a consultation. Then I'm hanging up. Hi. Ko Min-vu shouted in panic. Don't hang up. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Can you forgive me? Let's start over. I'll listen to you about everything. A soft sigh came through the line. So faint it was almost inaudible. Ko Min-vu, Trình Hi said quietly. People have to move forward. If you don't want to, that's your choice. With that, she hung up. Ko Min-vu listened to the busy tone echoing from the receiver and collapsed into his chair in the cafe. Like a puppet whose strings had been cut. He knew he had lost her completely. At the same time, Ko Lam Lam's nightmare descended in a different way. At a family gathering, her cousin suddenly pointed at her face and questioned her in front of everyone. Lam Lam, isn't it because of you that Trình Hi broke up with Min-vu and even resigned from First Municipal Hospital? Do you know this? My father-in-law finally managed to get a cardiology appointment with Dr. Trình Hi last month. Now she's gone, and we have to queue in Shanghai, maybe not even our turn by next year. You're really such a great relative. All eyes turned toward her, filled with undisguised contempt and anger. Ko Lam Lam stood frozen, her face deathly pale, so ashamed she wished she could disappear. For the first time in her life, she truly realized what she had destroyed. The aftermath of the storm was far more violent and long-lasting than anyone had imagined. After returning from Shanghai, Director Vaughn completely collapsed. He locked himself in his office for 2 days and 2 nights. When he finally came out, he submitted his resignation, citing shame before the city's medical system, and voluntarily requested reassignment to manage the hospital library. The position he had once used to humiliate Trình Hi ultimately became his own ending, an irony-laden punishment. The new director of First Municipal Hospital, transferred from an affiliated hospital, was a hardliner. Upon taking office, he lit 3 fires. The first one burned straight through the chaotic cardiology department. Because of the patient death and a series of medical disputes, Lu Keen-min was dismissed on the spot and stripped of his medical license. His entire career officially came to an end. The cardiology department was overhauled completely, from department head to head nurse. All were replaced, but everyone knew that without its soul, Trình Hi, and without the elite technical team, First Municipal would need at least 10 years to regain its former glory. The fate of the Ko family was even worse. Ko Wei-dong's company offended Levy and was jointly boycotted by major players in the new energy industry. Key projects were suspended, the capital chain snapped, and the stock price plunged. Ko Wei-dong ran everywhere begging for help, but was rejected at every turn. Everyone in business knew the Ko family had offended someone they should never have offended and done something they should never have done. No one wanted to step into that muddy water. Ko Min-vu was driven out of the house by his father. The brokerage firm where he worked quietly laid him off under public pressure. Overnight, the once polished young master became an unemployed, homeless man. He rented a small, damp, windowless room in a city slum and lived on instant noodles. He often dreamed of Trình Hi, dreamed of their sweet past, only to wake drenched in sweat, facing the empty room and endless regret. Trong Lan and Ko Lam Lam were completely ostracized by high society. Former friends and close companions avoided them like the plague. The upper-class life Trong Lan once took pride in burst like a soap bubble. Because of her past scandals, Ko Lam Lam gained a bad reputation on the marriage market. No one wanted her. The family slowly withered away amid endless quarrels and blame. As for the origin of everything, Trình Hi, she had long since left that past behind her. She began a new chapter of her life at Duc Nhan Hospital. Director Tran Kai-dong gave her his fullest trust and support. The team Trình Hi built achieved breakthrough after breakthrough in cardiology within just 6 months, publishing 3 highly influential papers in top international medical journals. Duc Nhan Hospital even established a dedicated Trình Hi cardiovascular research center and appointed her as chief scientist. That day, after completing an extremely complex aortic replacement surgery, Trình Hi returned to her office. Director Tran walked in smiling, holding a folder. Trình Hi, good news. The Henben University Heart Center in Germany, you know it, right? She nodded. It was a holy land of global cardiovascular surgery. They've sent an invitation to establish a strategic partnership with our research center to jointly develop a new generation of artificial heart valves. They specifically invited you to lead the project. Trình Hi froze, her eyes instantly lighting up. Localizing artificial heart valves had been her dream for many years. This was not just a project, it concerned the future of millions of domestic patients with valvular heart disease. When will they come? She asked, unable to hide her excitement. They won't, Director Tran said, handing her the documents. They're inviting you to lead your team to Germany for half a year of in-depth research and exchange. Your stage shouldn't be limited to Shanghai, nor even to China. It's the whole world. Trình Hi accepted the invitation letter printed in German, her hands trembling slightly. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the bustling Huangpu River and the distant forest of skyscrapers. Sunlight filtered through the clouds, bathing her in warmth and brilliance. Her phone vibrated, a reminder from her new assistant. Director Tran, next Wednesday you will deliver the keynote speech at the Asia-Pacific Cardiovascular Conference. Topic: The path of innovation in cardiovascular surgery over the next 10 years. Please confirm. Trình Hi typed back 2 words, confirmed. The corner of her lips curved into a calm, confident smile. The past had been turned over. The future awaiting her was a far more expansive sea of stars. A week later, Trong Mong received a call from Trình Hi. When the phone rang, she was sitting outside an interview room at a community hospital, waiting to be called. Since leaving First Municipal, she had submitted over a dozen applications, most of them vanished without a trace. A few lower-tier hospitals did call her in, but once they heard she had worked in First Municipal's cardiology department, their expressions always turned strange. Some even half-jokingly asked, "Isn't your department about to fall apart? Why are people still coming out looking for jobs?" Those looks, half pity, half schadenfreude, cut like needles. She would rather be unemployed than hear anyone belittle the once glorious department she loved, or the mentor she deeply respected. "Hello?" Trong Mong's voice caught slightly as she hurried into the stairwell, her vision spinning. "It's me," Trình Hi said. Her voice came through the phone, clear, warm, steady. "Where are you right now?" I'm looking for a job," Trong Mong replied, sounding a little embarrassed. "Stop looking," Trình Hi said decisively, leaving no room for refusal. "Pack your bags and come to Shanghai. I'll give you 3 days." Trong Mong froze. "There's a 6-month collaboration project with Henben University in Germany," Trình Hi continued, focused on artificial heart valve research. "My team is still short 1 assistant. The requirements are meticulousness, endurance, and most importantly, absolute trustworthiness." She paused briefly. "I've thought it over. You're the most suitable." Tears immediately welled up in Trong Mong's eyes. Not because she had found a job, but because of those 4 words, absolute trustworthiness. That was the highest affirmation her mentor could give her at the moment she was most lost and trapped. I'll go," Trong Mong said, clutching her phone tightly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'll buy a ticket today." "No rush," Trình Hi laughed softly. "Finish what you still have on hand first. And help me with something else." "Anything." "Sister Lee from the cardiology department at First Municipal. Back when we did our first aortic surgery, she stayed with the case for 30 straight hours without rest. And old Wu from the equipment department, many of the special devices I needed were personally modified by him. They're people who truly work, not people who put on a show." She spoke calmly. "Ask them if they'd like to come to Shanghai. Duc Nhan Hospital won't treat them poorly." Trình Hi wasn't taking revenge, nor was she tearing anything down. She was simply reclaiming, brick by brick, the truly valuable people she had once painstakingly built from the rubble. She wanted to lead those who were genuinely devoted to medicine to an even higher summit. "I understand, Director," Trong Mong said quickly. I'll take care of it right away. She hung up, her blood boiling with heat and excitement. She glanced back at the small interview room without hesitation, then turned and left. That place was not her battlefield. Her battlefield was Shanghai, Germany, anywhere she could pursue the light. At the same time, someone no one expected appeared at Director Vong's office. It was Lu Qinmin's wife. The woman who had once been arrogant because of her husband's promotion now looked wilted. Like a withered flower. She didn't come to cause trouble, nor did she come to beg. She placed a property deed and a bank card on Director Vong's desk. "This is everything our family has left," she said hoarsely. "The house sold for about 2 million. There's 300,000 left on the card." Director Vong was stunned. "What are you doing?" "Compensation," she said quietly. "Lu, he wronged the patient who died on the operating table. He wasn't a good doctor. But he wasn't a bad man either. I hope this money can bring some comfort to the victim's family. I know it's not enough, but this is all we have." "Where is he?" "He went back to his hometown," she said with a bitter smile. "He said he's no longer worthy of wearing the white and blue coat again in this life." Director Vong stared at the deed on the desk for a long time without speaking. Then he waved his hand, signaling her to leave. After she was gone, he picked up the internal phone and called the hospital's legal counsel. "The lawsuit involving Lu Qinmin, tell the victim's family to withdraw it. I'll pay the compensation out of my personal salary and bonuses." He knew this wouldn't change anything. But he wanted to atone, even if only a little. 3 days later, at Shanghai Hongqiao Airport, Trình Hi met her new team. Trong Mong's eyes shone with excitement. Sister Li from cardiology was as composed as ever, though there were a few more lively lines at the corners of her eyes. Old Wu from equipment rubbed his hands awkwardly, nervous yet brimming with anticipation. There were also 2 attending physicians who had previously left First Municipal and passed Duc Nhan Hospital's rigorous selection process with their outstanding abilities. They stood together like warriors reunited after a long separation. "Are you ready?" Trình Hi asked, looking at them. "Ready," they answered in unison, their voices resounding. "Good." Trình Hi pulled her suitcase and turned toward the boarding gate. "Let's go." The plane pierced through the clouds, flying toward the European continent thousands of miles away. Trình Hi looked out at the vast blue sky beyond the window, feeling an unusual calm. She knew this was not just an academic exchange, it was the first step for her and her team to represent the pinnacle of Chinese medicine on the world stage. And she took that step with unwavering resolve. The plane landed at Frankfurt Airport. Cool, damp air, so different from Shanghai, rushed in. The German office of Duc Nhan Hospital had sent a car to pick them up and drove them directly to Heidelberg. The ancient university town lay quietly along the Neckar River. Red sandstone castles reflected the glow of sunset, every brick and stone seeming to whisper centuries of academic history. Trong Mong and the others were visibly awed, taking out their phones to snap photos. Only Trình Hi didn't admire the scenery. Her gaze fixed on a cluster of modern white buildings on a distant hillside. That was the Henben University Cardiovascular Center, their battlefield for the next 6 months. The person receiving them was Professor Claude Smith, the project's lead, a tall, stern-looking German man in his early 50s. "Welcome, Director Trình," he said with a polite smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you and your team in Heidelberg." His English was precise, his tone flat, revealing little enthusiasm. After brief pleasantries, Professor Smith led them through the cardiovascular center. The laboratory equipment was truly world-class, many machines Trình Hi had only ever seen in professional journals. "Our center has over 10 years of accumulated research in artificial heart valve materials," Professor Smith said, unable to hide a trace of pride. "This is the latest animal trial data. The anticoagulation coating has reduced thrombosis formation to 0.3%. He pointed to a complex data chart on the screen. The two attending physicians in Trình Hi's team silently noted that this data surpassed the best domestic products by at least one full generation. Trong Mong grew increasingly tense, gripping the hem of her clothes. This was no longer a hospital-level arena, it was a direct confrontation with the world's top tier of medical science. After the tour, Professor Smith led them into a conference room. "All right, Director Trin," he said. "I think we can get straight to the point." He motioned for his assistant to distribute documents. "This is the project's current progress and the bottleneck we're facing. As you can see, we've reached the limit of surface treatment for anticoagulation materials. The problem is that after more than 5 years of implantation in the human body, the coating degrades due to biological decomposition, increasing long-term thrombosis risk. We've tested over 30 different stabilizing agents," he continued, shrugging. "None have solved the problem. It's like a curse." Though his expression was helpless, a probing glint flickered in his eyes. This was both a show of sincerity and a silent test. He wanted to see what the so-called genius female doctor from China, so highly praised by Director Tran Kai-dong, was truly capable of. The room fell silent. Trình Hi's team flipped through the documents at high speed, their expressions growing increasingly tense. This was indeed a world-class problem. Professor Smith looked at Trình Hi, his tone carrying subtle implication. "Perhaps Eastern wisdom can offer us a new path?" The words sounded polite, but everyone present heard the underlying arrogance of a top academic institution. He didn't believe that a problem his team had studied for years without success could be solved by a group from China. Trong Mong felt a flash of anger at the lack of respect. But Trình Hi remained calm. She closed the folder and looked straight at Professor Smith. "Professor, thank you for your openness. I can't guarantee I can solve this problem, but I'd like full access to the Computational Simulation Center and the Materials Lab, 24 hours a day." She paused. "And I need all the raw data from every failed experiment over the past 10 years. The more detailed, the better." Professor Smith hesitated. He hadn't expected such a request. Typically, collaborators would propose theoretical hypotheses first and discuss directions together. But she wanted data, labs, experiments. As if she intended to retrace every path they had already walked. It was an extremely clumsy approach, yet one filled with confidence. "Of course," Professor Smith said after a brief pause, returning to his professional composure. "Heidelberg University has never refused any scientific exploration. The labs and data will be fully open to you." A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved his lips. He wanted to see what kind of miracle this young woman from China could create, from a mountain of failures. For the next 3 days, Trình Hi and her team practically lived in the laboratory. The work ran 24 hours a day in 3 rotating shifts. People rested, the machines did not. The 2 attending physicians were responsible for reanalyzing and verifying all successful experimental data provided by the Henben team. Sister Li and Old Wu buried themselves in the materials lab, conducting a comprehensive re-examination of the physical and chemical properties of the heart valve materials. Meanwhile, Trình Hi and Trong Mong plunged headfirst into an ocean of failed data, vast, suffocating, like drifting through bone-white fog. Members of Professor Cloud's team occasionally walked past the lab's glass walls with coffee cups in hand, their gazes lingering as if they were observing animals in a zoo. Their looks were filled with confusion, mixed with a faint trace of disdain. "What are they doing? Repeating our failures? This must be the Chinese way, hardworking, but lacking creativity. Why would Professor Cloud agree to such a ridiculous request? What a waste of time and resources." Trong Mong overheard the whispers and flushed red with anger. "Director," she whispered to Trình Hi, lowering her voice, "they're going too far." Trình Hi didn't take her eyes off the screen, where dense streams of data scrolled endlessly. "Don't pay attention," she said calmly, her voice as precise as a machine. "When people don't understand you, they define you using what they do understand. The only thing we need to do is use results to shut them up. Trong Mong looked at her mentor's focused profile. The heat and resentment in her chest slowly settled. She turned back to the crushing work of data analysis. Trình Hi hadn't misled them. The Henben data was indeed complete and unfiltered. And precisely because of that, the sheer volume was terrifying. 10 years of research, hundreds of project groups, tens of thousands of failed experiments. It was like searching for a needle in a pitch-black warehouse with no lights. By the night of the third day, everyone had reached their limit. Endless analysis and computation had left their eyes bloodshot and their bodies drained. "Director, I can't take it anymore," one attending physician said, rubbing his temples, his face pale. "All the models have been tried. Our direction isn't wrong, but the nature of the material means degradation of the coating is inevitable. Maybe this really is a dead end." The lab fell into suffocating silence. Had they traveled across the world with so much expectation, only to prove others right and themselves powerless? Only Trình Hi remained glued to the screen. Before her, 3 windows were displayed side by side. On the left, microscopic structural images of the heart valve material. In the center, a chemical degradation model of the coating layer. On the right, an image that seemed completely unrelated, the magnified surface of a lotus leaf. This was an image she had asked Trong Mong to extract from a biological database. "Everyone, look here," Trình Hi said suddenly. She pointed at the screen. "All this time, more precisely, Professor Cloud's team, we've been doing addition. We keep adding new coatings to the valve surface, trying to fight thrombosis chemically. If coating A doesn't work, switch to B. If that fails, combine A and B, add stabilizer C." She paused. "But has anyone ever considered subtraction?" Everyone froze. "Subtraction?" "Yes." Her eyes lit up as she stared at the lotus leaf image. "Why does water bead up and roll off instead of soaking in?" "Because the surface of the leaf has countless micro and nanoscale protrusions. Its superhydrophobic property doesn't come from a chemical coating, it comes from physical structure." She continued, her voice steady but intense. "Why doesn't our vascular endothelium trigger clotting? Beyond secreting anticoagulant substances, its surface is extraordinarily smooth and has special microstructures that minimize flow disturbance and platelet activation." She looked at them one by one. "We keep thinking we need to put a raincoat on the heart valve. But why don't we turn the valve itself into the raincoat?" Her fingers clattered across the keyboard. A new computational model appeared on the screen. "I've built a new model," she said, using femtosecond laser microfabrication to directly engrave microstructures that mimic human vascular endothelial cells onto the surface of the valve material. This structure itself has strong antithrombotic properties, and it doesn't degrade over time. Because it's part of the material, not an external coating. Mechanical antithrombosis combined with our existing chemical coating, that is how we truly solve long-term thrombosis. The lab went utterly silent. Everyone was shaken by the bold yet rigorously logical idea. They had all been trapped in the dead end of chemical coatings. Trình Hi stepped outside the frame, starting from physical structure, from biomimicry, carving out an entirely new path. On the morning of the 4th day, Trình Hi knocked on Professor Cloud's office door with a report just over 10 pages long. "Professor, regarding the bottleneck issue," she said calmly, "I have a few new ideas." Professor Cloud was sipping coffee. Seeing her, he smiled politely. "Oh? So soon? Please, go ahead." Internally, he had already prepared himself to hear a few theoretical analyses that would lead nowhere. Trình Hi said nothing more. She placed the folder on his desk and opened her laptop, projecting her 3D structural model. Professor Cloud glanced at it, then froze. His expression shifted from polite courtesy to surprise to disbelief. Finally, it exploded into sheer astonishment. He shot to his feet, grabbed the laptop, and stared intensely at the rotating structural model on the screen. My God, he muttered. Physical antithrombosis. Biomimetic structure. How did we not think of this? How could we not think of this? He was like a child who had just been handed his favorite toy. His face flushed with excitement. It took a full 5 minutes before he finally looked up at Trình Hi, his gaze as if he were staring at an extraterrestrial. He stepped forward and extended his hand solemnly, without hesitation. Director Trình, he said, his voice earnest. On behalf of my previous arrogance and prejudice, I offer my sincerest apology to you and your team. From this moment on, you will lead this project. We need your intellect. The atmosphere in Professor Cloud's office had completely transformed. Where there had once been polite distance and covert probing, there was now pure academic exchange, direct, unguarded. Her idea was nothing short of a genius-level breakthrough. Professor Cloud pointed excitedly at the 3D model, pacing the room. Using femtosecond laser technology to engrave nanoscale structures on a curved surface is technically feasible. But no one has ever thought to apply it to biological heart valves. Trình Hi watched him calmly. She had experienced scenes like this countless times. In medicine, true respect never came from polite words, it came from technique and irrefutable competence. The theory is feasible, she said evenly, as if stating an obvious fact. But turning it into a product will still require a long road ahead. I need our teams fully integrated, she continued. From now on, there is no you or us. There is only one project team. Of course, Professor Cloud nodded repeatedly, now almost following her lead instinctively. Whatever you say, we'll do it. Trình Hi stood up and walked to the whiteboard, marker in hand. First, she said, our computational models must be fully linked with your materials database. Continuous 24/7 simulations to screen for the optimal microstructural parameters. Trong Mong, you and Han will take charge of this. Yes, Director, Trong Mong answered instantly. Han, the German engineer whose name had been called, straightened up reflexively. Second, Trình Hi continued, biomimetic structural design must proceed in parallel with animal testing. I need an animal research group established immediately. I will lead it personally. Your chief veterinarian, Dr. Andre, will coordinate. Within 1 week, I want implantation data from the first batch of experimental pigs. No problem, Professor Cloud replied at once. Third, and this is the most critical step, laser micromachining. Trình Hi turned to Old Wu and Sister Li. Old Wu, Sister Li, you'll work with Professor Cloud's engineering team. Within 3 days, I need a fixture that can stabilize the valve securely during engraving. Heart valves are soft tissue with elasticity. Even the slightest vibration can cause machining failure. Old Wu and Sister Li exchanged a glance, then nodded firmly. This was exactly their area of expertise. Fourth, Trình Hi said, standing before the whiteboard, her logic clear and relentless. In less than 10 minutes, she broke down an entire month's workload into dozens of concrete tasks and assigned them precisely to each core member on both the Chinese and German sides. The German experts who had still harbored doubts moments earlier now looked at her with pure admiration. This young woman from China possessed not only a genius mind, but also top-tier command ability. She wasn't negotiating. She was issuing orders, and those orders were professional, precise, and impossible to refute. That afternoon, the entire project team began operating like a finely tuned machine that had just been reprogrammed, at full speed. The first obstacle was the fixture design. Professor Cloud's engineering team proposed 3 solutions, all based on traditional metal clamping mechanisms. Trình Hi rejected them all. The valve tissue is too fragile, she explained. Metal clamps will cause irreversible compressive damage, affecting opening and closing function. So what do you suggest? A German engineer shrugged. Glue it in place? The atmosphere in the conference room suddenly grew heavy. At that moment, Old Wu, who had been silent the entire time, reached into his pocket and took out a small object shaped like a silicone octopus. "Director Trin," he said, "do you think this might work?" He placed it on the table. "Before we left, I used a 3D printer to make a prototype. It's based on the principle of vacuum suction, like an octopus's suckers. It can evenly secure the surface of the heart valve onto the base, distributing the force uniformly without causing compressive damage." As he spoke, he poured a little water from his thermos onto the tabletop, pressed the silicone octopus down, then lifted it. The object clung tightly to the surface. The entire room fell completely silent. All the German engineers stared at old Wu as if he were some kind of extraterrestrial, then looked back at the simple little device. Their eyes filled with disbelief. Professor Cloud stepped forward, picked up the silicone suction fixture, and examined it carefully, murmuring to himself, "Vacuum suction, negative pressure? My God," he said softly. "The principle is so simple. How did we not think of this?" He looked at old Wu, a Chinese technician who appeared plain, even rustic, with unmistakable respect in his eyes. Only then did he truly understand that no one in the team Trình Hi had brought with her was ordinary. They were like hidden masters wandering the world, never showy, never boastful, but when the critical moment arrived, they always unleashed a decisive move that left others stunned into silence. Trình Hi watched the scene, the corner of her lips curving slightly. She had known old Wu wouldn't disappoint her. She turned to Cloud. "Professor, I believe the fixture issue has been resolved." Cloud nodded firmly, looking at her with solemn respect. "Trin, I am now even more convinced that inviting you to HENB was the most correct decision of my life." 3 days later, inside the ultra-clean laboratory of the HENB University Cardiovascular Center, the first biological heart valve etching experiment officially began. All key members wore full protective suits and gathered around the femtosecond laser processing system. The tension in the air was so thick it felt almost frozen. The vacuum suction fixture designed by old Wu perfectly secured a porcine valve leaflet onto the processing platform, flat, stable, as if it had grown directly out of the surface itself. Trình Hi sat at the main control console. Her fingers moved lightly across the keyboard as she entered the optimal structural parameters that had been simulated non-stop for 3 days and nights. "Begin," she said softly. Under microscopic guidance, the silent laser beam began engraving at the nanoscale across the surface of the valve. On the screen, only a tiny point of light could be seen, darting back and forth at a speed the naked eye couldn't follow. The entire process lasted 2 full hours. When the progress bar reached 100%, everyone held their breath. "It's finished." Trình Hi removed her protective goggles and carried the valve to the electron microscopy room. The team sprang into action. Half an hour later, in the electron microscope control room, the valve surface, magnified 200,000 times, appeared clearly on the large screen. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The once relatively smooth surface of the valve now revealed a dense layer of raised microstructures, neatly arranged, resembling the endothelial cells lining human blood vessels. Every contour was smooth and precise. Every dimension matched the design exactly, without the slightest deviation. It looked like a work of art personally embroidered by God. "We did it, we really did it," Han shouted, overwhelmed with emotion. Professor Cloud rushed to the screen, gripping its edge with both hands, his body trembling with excitement. "Perfect, absolutely perfect." He turned and pulled Trình Hi into a tight embrace. There was no ulterior meaning in the hug, it was the highest respect one top scientist could offer another equal. "Trin, you've made history." Trình Hi simply smiled calmly. "Professor, this is only the first step. The real challenge is hemodynamic testing." The next experiment followed immediately. The newly structured valve leaflet was installed into a device simulating the human circulatory system. Fresh blood, mixed with an extremely low dose of anticoagulant, was pumped through the valve at a flow rate of 5 liters per minute for 72 hours. This was an exceptionally harsh test. According to data from traditional chemically coated valves, platelet aggregation and microthromby could usually be observed after just 12 hours under similar conditions. Everyone remained on duty in the monitoring room. Time passed minute by minute. 12 hours. 24 hours. 48 hours. On the monitoring screen connected to a high-powered microscope, the images remained pristine. Blood cells flowed gently across the valve surface like obedient schools of fish, never stopping, never adhering. The biomimetic microstructure acted like an invisible barrier, soft yet resolute, quietly rejecting every attempt at thrombosis. 72 hours. The experiment ended. When the valve was removed and examined again under the electron microscope, the image on the screen was almost identical to its pre-implantation state. Not a single thrombus appeared. The laboratory erupted. The Germans' usual composure shattered completely. They shouted like children, hugging one another, whistling in delight. Professor Cloud dashed out of the room and returned minutes later carrying a chilled crate of champagne and a stack of glasses. Pop. The cork flew into the ceiling. The champagne sparkled under the lights. Ladies and gentlemen, Cloud raised his glass, his voice ringing with emotion. Today is a day worthy of being recorded in the history of the HENB University Cardiovascular Center. For this great moment, and for the person who brought us this miracle, our esteemed chief physician from China, Director Trình Hi. Cheers. Glasses clinked amid roaring applause. Trong Mong's face flushed from emotion and alcohol as she watched her teacher surrounded and honored by German experts. Tears shimmered in her eyes. She knew that from this moment on, Trình Hi had truly ascended to the pinnacle of world medicine. 2 weeks later, a scientific paper with Trình Hi as first author and Professor Cloud as corresponding author appeared on the cover of the world's top journal, Nature. The title was simple and earth-shattering. Physically antithrombotic artificial heart valves based on biomimetic endothelial structures. The paper detonated like a bomb on the ocean floor, triggering a massive seismic shock across the global cardiovascular field. When the news reached China, Chen Kai-dong, president of Darren Hospital, personally opened a bottle of 30-year-old Motai in his office. Savoring it sip by sip, his face glowing, he immediately ordered the PR department to disseminate the news at maximum speed. Within moments, every major medical media outlet and official news app in the country splashed the story across their front pages. Chinese Dr. Trình Hi leads Sino-German team to solve a global heart valve challenge. From rejection to worldwide astonishment, Trình Hi writes a made-in-China medical legend with pure strength. She forces the summit of world medicine into admiration. The headlines burned like red-hot iron across the faces of everyone at First Municipal Hospital. They were also like salt-rubbed knives stabbing deep into the hearts of every member of the GU family. News spread rapidly through every corner of the city where Trình Hi had once lived. The internal forum of First Municipal Hospital completely collapsed under traffic. Everyone went mad with discussion. A Nature cover article, my God. That's an honor we've never even dared to dream of. Look closely. The affiliated institutions are Darren Hospital Shanghai and HENB University in Germany. It has nothing to do with us. We pushed that honor away with our own hands. Director Wang stayed locked in the library all day. Rumor had it that someone saw him, overnight. His hair had turned completely white. He deserves it. When Director Trình was accused, if he'd had the courage to say one fair word, would things have come to this? In a dark corner of the library, Wang Jianguo stared at the news on his phone. In the photo, a woman stood in a foreign land, surrounded by blonde, blue-eyed experts, confident, radiant, dazzling in a way he had never seen before. He suddenly remembered when Trình Hi first joined the hospital. She had been like that then too, eyes full of light, filled with hope for the future. It was him. It was this rigid system. Step by step, They had extinguished that light. Now she had broken free, soaring back into the sky that had always belonged to her. And he was left behind forever in this dim dust. He turned off his phone, quietly picked up an old book, and began dusting off its pages one by one. It was the only thing he could do, and the only thing he deserved to do for the rest of his life. The GU household was heavier than a graveyard. After months of desperate struggle, GU Weidong's company finally filed for bankruptcy and liquidation. The work of his entire life turned to dust. On the day the court sealed the assets, he watched officials paste notices onto the villa gates. He watched Zhang Lan wail in despair. He watched Gu Lin stand there, numb as stone. Suddenly, he felt unbearably tired. He said nothing. He walked quietly into the study, and never came out again. When his family found him, he had suffered a massive myocardial infarction, collapsed on the cold floor. In his hand, he clutched a photograph tightly. It was a picture of himself, Trình Hi, and Gu Mingyu, taken at their engagement ceremony. In the photo, he was smiling brilliantly. The sky over the Gu family had completely collapsed. Gu Mingyu, the once heaven-favored young heir, was now no different from a homeless stray. He lived in a cramped, damp rental room in a labor district, paying 800 yuan a month. Every day, he rode a battered electric scooter through the city streets, delivering food. That afternoon, he received a delivery order to the most luxurious office building in the city center. Carrying the boxed lunch, he walked into the grand lobby, its interior shimmering with gold-toned decor. While waiting for the elevator, he noticed a massive LED screen broadcasting a financial program. The host was chatting animatedly with a guest. President Tran, thanks to Professor Trình Hi's project, Darren Hospital has not only gained tremendous recognition, but its stock price has more than tripled. Back then, you insisted on investing heavily to bring her in. Looking at it now, that decision truly deserves to be called a classic in the investment world. On the screen, Tran Kai-dong was smiling radiantly, his posture upright and confident. This was not an investment, Tran Kai-dong said, it was faith. We believe in the value of top-tier talent, and we are willing to create the best possible soil for that value to grow. Reality has proven that we were right. Gu Mingyu stood there, stunned, staring at the screen, watching a world that had once been within his reach drift endlessly far away. The elevator doors opened. A man in a neatly tailored suit bumped into him, frowned in irritation, and snapped, delivering food and blocking the doorway. Are you blind? Gu Mingyu lowered his head, like a child who had done something wrong, and awkwardly shrank into a corner of the elevator. In the mirrored walls, his reflection looked emaciated, prematurely aged, hollow and lifeless. Suddenly, he remembered the last words Trình Hi had said to him before hanging up the phone. People have to learn to look forward. So this was what looking forward meant to her, vast seas and brilliant, star-filled skies. And what lay ahead for him was a bottomless abyss. Tears slid silently down from his bloodshot eyes. Half a year later, in Henbestadt, Germany, Trình Hi and her team successfully completed the exchange program. The biological heart valve project achieved a revolutionary breakthrough. The Sino-German team jointly submitted applications for global patents. And Trình Hi, as the primary inventor of the technology, would have her name permanently engraved in the history of cardiovascular surgery worldwide. At the farewell banquet before returning home, Professor Cloud raised his glass and spoke in Chinese he had only recently learned. His pronunciation was clumsy, but his sincerity was unmistakable. Trin, you are our friend forever. Henbestadt will always welcome you. Trình Hi smiled and raised her glass in reply. On the flight home, Trong Mong excitedly flipped through photos taken over the past 6 months. Sister Trin, once we're back, does that mean we'll start building our own production line? Yes, Trình Hi nodded. She looked out the window. Below, a sea of clouds surged endlessly, and a crimson sun was slowly rising from the east. Her phone vibrated. A new email. Sender. World Health Organization, WHO. Dear Professor Trình Hi. In recognition of your outstanding contributions to the field of cardiovascular medicine, the World Health Organization hereby invites you to serve as an expert member of the newly established Global Cardiovascular Health Strategy Committee. Trình Hi closed the email without replying. Her gaze passed through the clouds, toward the land she was about to return to. There were millions of patients there, waiting for the new technology she would bring back. There was her own research center, soon to break ground. And there was a dream, greater and more arduous, waiting for her to realize it. She picked up her tablet and opened a new document. File name: Domestic Intelligent Surgical Robotics Research and Development Plan. The familiar calm, confident smile appeared once again at the corner of her lips. What had passed was like yesterday, already dead. What was coming was like today, newly born. Her journey was only beginning. Upon returning to China, Shanghai was wrapped in a light drizzle. There were no flowers. No red carpet. Not even the media. Stepping out of the airport's VIP passage, she saw only Tran Kai-dong and his secretary, quietly waiting under a black umbrella. Welcome home, Director Trin. The smile on Tran Kai-dong's face came straight from the depths of his heart. This humble yet highly efficient manner was exactly what Trình Hi valued most. Thank you, President Tran. She shook his hand. Behind her, Trong Mong, Old Wu, Sister Li, and the others all wore expressions filled with the emotion of returning home, and with longing for the future. The car drove smoothly toward Darren Hospital. Your achievements in Germany far exceeded all of our expectations, Tran Kai-dong said, handing her a document. The board of directors has unanimously approved the establishment of an independent Trình Hi Cardiovascular Research Center, dedicated exclusively to you. This will not be a hollow title. It will be a real entity with independent authority over personnel, finances, and project approvals. He pointed toward a construction site outside the window. That will be the future address of the research center. A standalone 20-story building, including a top-tier animal experimentation center, materials science laboratories, a data simulation center, and the largest integrated surgical suite in Asia. It will be completed and fully handed over by the end of next year. Trong Mong inhaled sharply. An entire building. This was no longer treatment reserved for a doctor. It was the level of support given to a national scientific strategist. Trình Hi's expression remained calm. She flipped the document open, went straight to the signature page at the end, and signed her name. Thank you for your trust, President Tran. She handed the document back. I also have a new project that will require the hospital's support. She took out her tablet and opened a proposal titled Domestic Intelligent Surgical Robot Development Project. Tran Kai-dong took it. After flipping through just a few pages, his expression changed, and even his breathing quickened. Trình Hi, do you realize what this means? He asked. Looking up, his voice trembling slightly. The global surgical robotics market is currently monopolized by the American Da Vinci system. Each unit costs tens of millions, and the startup fees and consumables are astronomical. If we can develop our own system. I know, Trình Hi interrupted, her gaze sharp. Monopoly means high prices. High prices mean that only a small number of people can benefit from scientific progress. My goal isn't to create a copy of Da Vinci. I want to build a universally accessible intelligent medical platform, one that even ordinary municipal hospitals can afford. So more Chinese people can benefit. I've named this project Phoenix. A phoenix reborn from fire. Tran Kai-dong looked at her, the woman more than 20 years younger than him. The light in her eyes shook him. He knew that the person he had recruited from First Municipal Hospital was not merely a top surgeon, but someone capable of reshaping China's healthcare landscape, perhaps even the world's. Good. He slapped his thigh decisively. The hospital will fully support this project. You decide the budget. You choose the personnel. As long as it's within my power, I will never say no. Back at the hospital, Trình Hi immediately convened a team meeting. She didn't rest. She was fighting. Her office had been expanded into an entire suite, including a small conference room and a data analysis room. Xiao Ya, her new assistant, had already filled her schedule for the next month. Director Trin, these are collaboration invitations, 37 institutions in total, including 3 research institutes under the Chinese Academy of Sciences and several leading domestic technology companies. These are over 300 applications to join our research center, including more than 20 tenured professors from North America and Europe. And these are interview requests from major global media outlets. Trình Hi waved her hand. Only select partners with top-tier technology. Have Trong Mong screen the applications. Reject the rest. As for media interviews, decline all of them. She looked at her team. From today on, all of us enter Phoenix Project time. Old Wu, Sister Li, you're responsible for the robotic arms and precision motion systems. Trong Mong, you'll closely follow the algorithms and software teams. You 2 attending physicians, handle clinical applications and demand analysis. I'm giving you 1 month. I want to see the first prototype design. Yes. Everyone answered in unison, fire blazing in their eyes. After the meeting, Trong Mong lingered behind. She placed a printed email on Trình Hi's desk. Her expression complicated. Sister Trin, I think you should take a look at this. The email was unsigned, sent from a temporary webmail address. It was short, the tone almost pleading. Professor Trin. I don't know if you still remember Gu Mingyu. His father has passed away. The company is bankrupt, and he is living in great hardship now. I know our entire family wronged you, and we deserve punishment. I only beg you, please give him 1 chance to meet you in person and apologize. Just once. He really can't hold on much longer. Trình Hi's gaze rested on the email for 3 seconds. A face that had once made her heart flutter, then later left her completely disappointed, briefly surfaced in her mind. And then, there were no ripples at all. Like a stone sinking into the vast ocean, unable to stir even the smallest wave. Messages like this, she said calmly. Don't bring them to me again. She picked up her pen and began reviewing a technical report on the robot's visual recognition system. Never once lifting her head. Yes. Trong Mong took the printed email, fed it into the shredder, and let go. As the machine emitted its piercing grinding noise, that sticky, humiliating past, along with the groveling plea attached to it, was shredded into fragments that could never be reassembled again. 6 months later, early winter in Shanghai. The groundbreaking ceremony for the Trình Hi Cardiovascular Research Center was held with great fanfare along the banks of the Huangpu River. This was not only a major milestone for Duc Nguyen Hospital, but also a focal event for the entire medical and high-tech scientific community in Shanghai, indeed. Across the whole country. Inside and outside the venue. Distinguished guests gathered in force. Key city officials, academicians, leading scholars from across China, founders of major technology companies, and partners from around the world filled hundreds of seats. Countless journalists from major media outlets had completely sealed off the venue with cameras of all sizes. Everyone was waiting for the sole protagonist of the day, Trình Hi. Several hundred meters away from the venue, in a corner hardly anyone noticed, Minh Vũ stopped his battered old motorcycle. He was wearing a faded blue food delivery uniform. The helmet on his head had long lost its original color. His entire body radiated exhaustion and roughness, as if life had sanded him down again and again. Today he had received a large order, over 100 boxed meals, to be delivered to the staff working the ceremony. Normally, once the delivery was complete, he should have left immediately to grab the next order. But for some reason, he stayed. He knew what day it was. And he knew who today's protagonist was. Separated by security fences and a sea of people, he stood there like a petty thief, furtively peering into a magnificent world he would never be able to reach. Then he saw her. Through a narrow gap in the crowd, he caught sight of that familiar yet distant figure on the stage. Trình Hi was wearing a custom-tailored white suit. Her long hair was neatly tied back. She wore no elaborate makeup, yet she shone brighter than any celebrity present. She tilted her head slightly as she spoke with the mayor beside her. A calm, confident smile on her face. Sunlight fell on her, cloaking her in a soft golden glow, so pure and radiant that it made people afraid to look directly at her. Minh Vũ felt as if an invisible hand had clenched tightly around his heart, squeezing until he could barely breathe. He also saw the people beside her. Trong Mong, no longer the timid intern who used to call him Teacher Gu. She was now dressed in professional attire, holding a tablet, coordinating smoothly with the event organizers. Every movement carried the air of an elite. And there was Lao Go, the slightly rustic-looking senior engineer, and Kai Li, the quiet backbone of the cardiac surgery department. They were all wearing crisp new suits, seated in the front row reserved for honored guests, chatting and laughing with academicians and professors. Every one of them had undergone a complete transformation, simply because they had followed the right person. They were living lives he had once scorned. Lives he now desired more than anything. Minh Vũ lowered his head and looked at his hands, greasy, cracked from the cold, and couldn't help but want to laugh. He felt like a clown. Back then, the phrase his mother and younger sister repeated most often was, "Without the Gu family, without First Hospital, Trình Hi would be nothing." Now, he finally had the answer. Without them, she had become the entire world. Without her, they were truly nothing. "Hey, buddy, move aside a bit." A security guard maintaining order shoved him lightly. "Oh, sorry. Minh Vũ hurriedly apologized and dragged his motorcycle aside. "Do you know who that woman on the stage is?" the guard asked. Noticing his fixed stare, "That's Professor Trình Hi, practically a living legend. She invented that new heart valve, better than imported ones and half the price." "My dad has heart disease." Another guard chimed in. "Our whole family is just hoping we can use Professor Trin's technology someday." "That's not all," a third guard added. "I heard the surgical robot project she's leading, if it succeeds, major surgeries will be like playing a game. Fast and precise. She wants to change the entire world." Change the world. Those 4 words struck Minh Vũ like a hammer crashing down on his skull. He felt dizzy, unsteady. He had once stood beside the woman who would change the world. He had almost had her. But because of cheap pride, because of a foolish sister, because of a family that didn't know its place, he had personally pushed the greatest gift of his life into the abyss. He couldn't stay there any longer. Gripping the handlebars, he staggered as he turned away, desperate to escape this place that left him too ashamed to lift his head. At the very moment he turned, Trình Hi, standing on the stage, seemed to sense something. Her gaze drifted casually in his direction. Her eyes were clear, calm, completely unruffled, as if she were looking at an insignificant speck of dust. Then she turned back and continued speaking with the people beside her. In that instant, Minh Vu's entire world collapsed. He knew she had seen him, but she no longer recognized him. Or rather, she didn't care who he was at all. He mounted his motorcycle and twisted the throttle, fleeing like a deserter into the roaring stream of traffic. The cold wind cut across his face like knives. Tears mixed with the wind, blurring his vision. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew that his life was completely over. At 10 a.m., the groundbreaking ceremony officially began. After the host's rousing introduction, Tran Kai Dong stepped onto the stage as the first speaker. He didn't read from a prepared script. His gaze swept across the crowd, his voice powerful and resonant. "Distinguished leaders, honored guests, friends, good morning. Standing here today, beyond excitement, what I feel most is gratitude for my own fortune. 1 year ago, I made the most important, and the most correct, decision in the history of Duc Nhan Hospital since its founding, to bring Professor Trình Hi to Shanghai at any cost. Reality has proven that the person we invited is not merely a top-tier surgeon, but the seed of the future, the hope for Chinese medicine to rise to the pinnacle of the world. Many people ask me, what did Duc Nhan give Trình Hi? Today, I can answer clearly, what we gave her was not benefits, not titles, but only two things: 100% trust, and a stage free from any external interference. And what Professor Trình Hi has given us, he paused, is an entirely new world. Thunderous applause erupted beneath the stage. Then, under countless watchful eyes, Trình Hi stepped forward. She didn't walk to the fixed podium. Instead, she strode straight to the center of the stage, as if unveiling a new piece of technology. All eyes in the hall immediately focused on her. "Thank you," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and steady. "I'm not good at giving speeches. I'm more accustomed to the operating room and the lab, places where every question can be answered with data and results. Simple and direct. So today, I won't say many words of thanks. I want to talk about only one thing: the future." The massive screen behind her lit up. What appeared was not the ceremonial backdrop, but a highly technical 3D animation. A robotic arm with 70 degrees of freedom, astonishingly flexible, was simulating an extremely complex coronary artery bypass surgery. Its movements were steadier and more precise than even the world's top surgeons. "This," Trình Hi said, her voice carrying unquestionable authority, "is Phoenix. It is not a cold machine. It is our charge toward the future. Its goal is not to replace doctors, but to become the most reliable companion to doctors, to help our hands and eyes reach places we could never reach before. It has only one mission: to ensure that the most advanced medical technology is no longer the privilege of a few, and that every life, rich or poor, can receive equal and deserved protection." Today, we break ground on this research center. Her journey had only just begun. That's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to China Story Tales, and stay tuned for more stories.